Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Shit Moms Won't Say. My guest tonight wrote a book that I think we can all get behind, even if you don't understand it right away. I promise you will. Harvard Law School trained, this woman has taken a deep dive into the unsustainable mental load that women specifically shoulder in their partnership in her book, Fair Play. Mom of three, Eve Rodsky. Hello.
Hi, Jess. How are you?
Good. And I love that. That's always like the fakest part of my show, right? Like I let everybody know before we start feeling like this is the only thing I write down. So I don't want to fuck it up. And then I'm like, yay, everybody applaud. But like it's just me in my office by myself. So there's no like big buildup, you know? But I am excited
But
to
I
have
love
you
your
here.
voice, so it makes
Oh,
me
thank
happy to hear. Yeah,
you.
you have a
At
good
least
voice.
someone does. It's nice
Yeah,
that
you have a
someone
good
wants to
voice.
hear me talk. Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's get into the Big Mom 3 because I really want to talk about your book and all the cool shit you have going on. So let's start here. So real hard question. First question, the Big Mom 3. Did you always know you wanted to be a mom?
No.
That is so it is so much more common that I get a no than I get a yes, especially
Well,
from women who have like built big careers.
correct. And I think for me, if I'm allowed to deep dive in
Do it.
to that question for a minute, it was very, very, very traumatizing to watch my mother try to do it all as a single mother. And so in my life, the way I looked at parenthood, motherhood was the idea of a family, like in the 16 candles type family, not the family I had where I was being shuttled around and ignored and neglected. And my brother had disabilities that nobody knew. And, uh, you know, I was living on the Amtrak trains with, people who were delinquents and truants who did not go to school. They called us. So maybe a different type of family structure and environment than I grew up in would sounded nice to me. So yeah, maybe if it could look like 16 candles, but there felt like so much chaos in what my mother was trying to do, have a career and raise us on her own. And it felt so easy that my dad could just, ghost us or, leave when my brother was pregnant. My mother was pregnant with my brother not being pregnant. That would be interesting too. But yeah, so for me, I think it was a lot of that early understanding that women shoulder too much of a burden.
Interesting. And that like that's so much more of like the actual American family structure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like people are like, oh, it's this picturesque like 16 candles family, and like it's not. And
It's
I
not.
so
No.
many of our upbringings just scare the crap out of us for adulthood. You know,
A
we get
hundred
to it and we're
percent.
like, now what?
And
Uh-oh.
by the way, what no one, which shit they don't tell you is that all of that trauma comes up again when you have kids.
It sure does.
It
You learn to
does.
reparent and all of your inner child work. It's fun. It's really
Yeah, when
fun.
my kid, he says, "Oh, this person didn't invite me or something to a birthday party," I'm like, "Oh my god." I was picked last on the playground, and it was you just go right back to your
Yeah.
to your stuff that we all have to work continue to rework through.
I remember when my daughter, she was 6 days old, and talk about a deep dive. She was 6 days old, and my parents, who, as I've shared on here many times, I no longer talk to. At the
Mm-hmm.
time, they were here in New York, and it was just a tough 6 days. It was the first 6 days of being a mom, and I remember my daughter was laying on my chest. She was like a Halloween time baby. She was wearing this little tutu, and I'm not a crier, and I just lost it. I was
Mm-hmm.
hysterical, and I was like, what if somebody bullies her in a ballet class? And on and my wife was like, what are you talking about? Like, what ballet class? She's 6 days old. And I was like, you don't know. And ever since then, it's really been
Yeah,
terrible.
well, that's it. It's just what the hell? Who? Yeah, we didn't know that all this. And so yes, so do I think that I think Jess and I are similar. We like to go dark before we go light, and I think
Yes.
the dark is important though. The dark is how you get from pre-consciousness to consciousness before you can fight for solutions. So all I will say is that the thing I care most about is women's economic security. I know the biggest barrier to women's economic security is motherhood. And so I sort of must have sensed that for why I say no. But now that I am a mother, existentially, it's important. Does it bring me daily happiness? No, but I will say that that's why that question is a great question. It leads to these important tangents. I think that is really the name of your podcast.
It's true. Yeah. It's a sort of loaded yes, no question, because if it's a yes, it's like, well, did you play with dolls and did you have this
Right,
beautiful
right.
fluffy? And if it's a no, I'm like, let's get into some shit, So here we go. Speaking of some shit though, this is by far and away my favorite question of the Big Mom 3. What is the shittiest or most backhanded piece of advice or like comment you've ever gotten from another mother or parent?
Such a great question. Again, I'm going to have to deep dive a little bit
Do it.
here.
I want to
I
do
would
it.
say the shittiest thing that advice that I got, or unwelcomed thing that I ever got was, and I didn't know it at the time. This is all I know. I only know it now, just unpacking my second book that's coming out in the world. It's called Find Your Unicorn Space, and it's really unpacking identity for women. So I would say the unwanted thing was I got a mom necklace in the hospital. So I remember when Zach was handed to me, this was, 13 years ago. I was living in New York at the time. That was the first time in my life where someone didn't use my name, Jess, right? I got this nurse handed me my baby and was like, congratulations, mom. And then it was reinforced. It was reinforced that week by a necklace that a friend gave me. And it was in best of intentions, of course, but it was a necklace that said mom. And as you can tell now, this is 13 years later, I finally had put the courage. I had the courage to take off my kids' initials in that mom necklace. And the process of renaming myself, reclaiming my name, started that day. But I would say it came from losing it. So I will say it was that mom necklace.
That's super interesting. I've never had anyone say that, and I've never thought about it that way. I love that. It's very funny. We're going to Disney. We're finally traveling. Actually, by the time this airs, we'll be back from Disney. So pray for us. I'm gonna go to
pray for
Disney.
you.
Thank you very much. And we always like to get like fun, silly shirts for Disney folk. We're weird like that. And my wife was like, well, I got us new shirts because our old shirts say Jess and Katie. And now these say mommy and mama, which like I love being mama. I love being mama to my baby. We're both really good about though making sure that we have that time outside of being mommy and mama, so it doesn't bother me. But I get it. I totally get that, and I think a lot of moms are going to understand that in a big way.
Yeah, and I will say,
like
keep your shirt, keep your Jess shirt underneath. Keep it
my
close
Jess
to your
shirt is
heart.
always underneath.
Yes, right. Keep it underneath. And again, it's the idea that as a community of women, all economic structures. I interviewed women in 17 countries for Fair Play. I mirrored the US Census. We have a database of over 20,000 in our CRM that keeps on growing and growing. And I will say that the thing we all have in common is at one point, we've all been as mothers defined by our roles. That is the community, but it's also, it can be our greatest liberation if we understand where to put it, which is in its place, what you're doing with this podcast, or making sure that the Jess shirt stays underneath. For me, it had to be taking off the necklace because it had been only that for so long.
Yeah.
And I had lost myself. That's the story I tell in Fair Play about, it's about a 10-year anniversary, Jess, of my blueberries breakdown, of Seth sending me a text that said, I'm surprised you didn't get blueberries, and understanding that I had become the fulfiller of his smoothie needs. I'd become the fulfiller of his smoothie needs. It's hard to say. So I'd say that the disservice was in getting that necklace without the context, the cultural context that we now have today, because we do have people like you. We have people unpacking things that weren't said 13 years ago.
Well, that's very nice to say. Thank you very much. I appreciate that tons. And that's the goal of this, is to really just kind of take a look at like, why do we allow it to happen? Like something that we've brought up a lot on here is like the idea of saying working mom, it's bullshit. We would never say working dad ever. You would never say working dad. It's not a real thing. You're a working mom. Oh, okay. I didn't know like that these guys made it any different for me to like, I just work. I'm a working person, So yeah, I very interesting. You're like I said, your book, I love it because it's self-explanatory and it's not self-explanatory. You kind of have to deep dive into it to be like, okay, got it. And I love it. So last question, big one 3, and then I want to like talk fair play the entire time. So what is a skill or a superpower you had before becoming a mom that you think's really helped you as a mom?
It's a great question. I would say the capacity for growth. I think my friend Robin Arzon, she's now like the head of Peloton. I got to interview her for the new book, and she showed me her tattoo that said resilient stock. And it really resonates with me a lot. I think we overuse the word resilience a lot, but sometimes, as we said earlier, our profoundest pain can be a catalyst for our greatest growth. And it just takes, understanding that can be something that we can take agency over.
Awesome. All right, let's jump into some fair play, because you have been called an expert by, I think, like everyone's favorite celebrity on the planet. Like Elle Woods herself called you. That's Reese Witherspoon, for those of you who are not, nerdy Legally Blonde fans like I am. But Reese Witherspoon was like, this chick's an expert in this. Like, she gets this. So basically with fair play, what you did, I think, was 500 couples, right? You took like 100 things that in most partnerships are like day-to-day types of things that you have to get done. And you took a look at dividing them fairly, not evenly, fairly. And I know people are gonna be like, that sound like, we were talking before, like, it's a card game, and it says like people are not gonna, it doesn't resonate right away. And then you read it and you're like, holy shit, this makes all the sense in the world. What I'd love to know is, first of all, I'd love to hear a little bit about the book, because it's your story to tell, right? Sort of part 2 and 3 of that is, I'd love to understand if you've gotten like a lot of shit for it. And then part 3, and we'll kind of work through it as we go. Now that we're in this weird work from home environment, has your opinion on any of those tasks or like items shifted at all? Or, how does that balance look now?
Well, thank you for asking that. Yes, I would say I'll start with the getting shit for it. Nobody, Jess, was interested in a book on childcare and housework. I'd say when I was thinking of maybe bringing this to light, a lot of people said to me, what are you talking about? That you take an economic risk when you're becoming a mother. What does that even mean? And I'm like, no, you do. And this whole book unpacks why. And even in different family structures, as Jess is, the hetero cisgender norms of what the assumption is on mothers applies to all of us, even if we choose not to become a mother. So that's why I often center the hetero cisgender stories, because really the only way to women's economic security is for men to do childcare and housework, even if it's not your actual family structure. So that was a realization I had to come to over the course of 10 years, but it didn't come easy, because a lot of people said, well, why would you want to relitigate a term from the 90s, second shift, mental load, emotional labor, invisible work, invisible work. That was a term from 1986. This is 2016 or 15. No one's interested in your random term from 1986. And I'm like, no. Yes, women are getting more college degrees, but hello, excuse me. I'm here to tell you that I'm a canary in the coal mine. I've been interviewing since, 2011 now. I have 5 years of research to tell you that, and now it's 10 years of research to tell you that we're one crisis away from our labor force participation rates dropping. We are, we have a dirty little secret out there that we haven't revealed yet, which is that we've built society on a glass foundation that's cracking the unpaid labor of women. And when we do value the undervalued labor of domestic workers, this is not going to work. You can't build a society on a cracked glass foundation that's about to collapse. So it wasn't something just that was easy to to promote. But I will say that the beauty of the pandemic and what has happened since Fair Play is I do think we are in a place now where we cannot ignore the reckoning. We can't ignore this reckoning that there's literally no room for error for women in this country. There is no room for error. There is no room for sickness. There is no room for any bit of grace for us because we've built a society that is completely, at one hand, venerates mothers, as people say, but also 1000% ignores us.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And what's so interesting is I think that the concept of fair play to some, and you said it best, like becoming a mother is an economic risk. And until you kind of take that deep dive into it, you're like, that's bullshit. It's not bullshit. It is not bullshit. Like we are walking on like, it's not even a glass right now. Like it's literally, there's cracks in all of it. And we're like so close to it just shattering open. So without examining that, it's gonna break. It's going to break. And I love that you say that we have to explore it from sort of like a heteronormative standpoint, because, and this, I could shout this and I could get on my soapbox for hours about it. The people in positions of privilege are the ones who are responsible for creating change.
Correct.
So, like men in our society, specifically white, cisgender, Catholic men, we can even take the Catholic out. We can just go white, cisgender men.
I'd say it's real. It is. It's white. I'd say it's white Christian men. That's who leads that is the reality.
Sure.
70% of the 1%, this is what keeps me up at night, are men, are men with stay-at-home wives. And the reason, again, I redefine professional to say invisible, unpaid labor is professional. Yeah. I don't have an issue with that family structure. What I have an issue with is that those men have a safety net at home for literally everything else, so that they can have uninterrupted attention for their work, their lives, their leisure, in a way that would make these problems invisible and stay invisible. We cannot let these problems stay and be invisible. And so fair play is really the understanding that it's based on rules. It's based on a card game, as you said, but it's a metaphor. And what is the through line of the metaphor for what really fair play is trying to attack? It's trying to attack a world where we have devalued women's time in comparison to men's time, so much that I say men's time, we guard it like diamonds, and we view and value women's time as if it's infinite, like sand. So when you have a society that treats your time different based on your gender, it is highly problematic, because what happens is society starts to move and design itself around that time discrepancy. So you see, if women enter a male profession, salaries automatically go down. We hear things like breastfeeding is free, when it's really an 1,800 hour a year job. And then the saddest part, I don't know if saddest is a word. The saddest part is that women start to become complicit in our own oppression, to hear that our time is worthless, infinite. And then regardless of the family structures we're in, the people around us perpetuate those stereotypes. So the things that were happening in the home that were most shocking to me, Jess, were and I can ask your listeners, have you ever said to yourself, I do more unpaid labor and housework. I'm the one that the school calls when my kid is sick. I will disrupt my day because my partner makes more money than me, or my job is more flexible. Have you ever said, I do it because I'm wired differently for care. I'm a better multitasker. Have you ever said, in the time it takes me to tell him, her, they what to do, I should do it myself? Have you ever said, well, yeah, we're both colorectal surgeons, but they can focus on one task at a time. That's easier for them. And I'm better at finding time. If you've ever said any of those things to yourself, those are what I call toxic time messages that have conditioned us to cut death by 1,000 cuts, take our time away from ourselves. So here's the real empowerment message. All time is created equal. Whatever, all time is created equal. Time is not money. We only just get 24 hours in a day. And I think for me, Jess, that was the big aha moment for my breakthrough with Seth. Whereas my breakdown was over him sending me that text, I'm surprised you didn't get blueberries, and breaking down over the fact that I was being seen as the fulfiller of his smoothie needs in so many different aspects of my life. The breakthrough was not saying you get your own fucking blueberries. The breakthrough was understanding that this was a fundamental issue about how Seth viewed and valued my time. And so when I could say to him, you know what? I noticed that you have 4 hours after our kids go to bed to watch Sports Center and finish a PowerPoint deck and work out. Whereas I'm doing things in service of our home until literally my head hits the pillow 2 hours after you're already asleep. And that's fundamentally unfair that I have a 6-hour difference in my time choice. And I want equal time choice over how I use my day, Seth. And staying firm in that boundary, that's a boundary for women. A boundary is not a walk around the block. A boundary for women is saying, I deserve to be interested in my own life, and I'm going to protect my time to defend that.
I love that. I have lots of tattoos. I love getting tattoos. I'm going to get that tattooed on me somewhere. As a boundary is not, I'm taking a walk around the block. That's it. Like, that's your fucking tagline right there. Like that. It's so true. Oh man.
And I tear up. I still cry because I think, why is this still so emotional for me?
Well, it's reality, right?
Like, because it's the women suffering. I think it's women suffering. It is us suffering individually, thinking that this is not a societal narrative, that we've done this somehow to ourselves and it's our responsibility to fix it. We've done everything we can do, Jess. We took birth control to delay and to control our reproductive rights. Then we delayed having kids, and then we use scientific means to have kids. We're doing everything. What other fucking tools do we have in our toolbox?
We don't. The toolbox is empty.
Our toolbox is empty. The heteronormative way of looking at this world, where men stay in power and women's work is devalued, cannot exist anymore. It is not okay. And I said I will devote the rest of my life to fighting it.
I love it. You and I are very on the same page. And so Shit Moms Won't Say is launching a sister page called Ugly Corporate. And I wonder, we're launching it in Q1, which, as I've kind of joked, that could be the beginning of Q1 or the end of Q1. It's nobody's business. It depends on when I get my shit together. But it's that, right? It's taking a look at that broken structure, more so in a work environment of like just women getting shit on. We've done everything. We have done everything to close the wage gap. We've done everything to close this gap at home. Well, we're done. We're out of steam, guys. It's your turn. Go to town. If not, I will just sit on my ass for the rest of my days. That's what you want me to do anyway. That's what I'm going to do. Let's talk about your new book, because I cannot wait to hear your voice in another realm, because I think that what you say and how you say it is so important. And I hope that by people watching this, they're like, I gotta check that chick's book out, because it's such a shift in mindset. It really is. It's such an easy shift. And like, once you make that shift, you're like, fuck that. So what's next? What's the new book?
Okay, let's go dark to go light again.
Let's do it. Dark to light. I like it.
I would say that, unicorn space is that profound understanding, what we talked about earlier about reclaiming our own identity and initial. It is, it's the image of, if you could imagine that rocking chair that I was in the hospital as sort of a tombstone behind me that says sort of, here lies, Eve.
She was a person.
She was a person. I think that desire to be known, it is, the desire to know is what really unicorn space is about. Too long, the same way that women's time has been diminished. Too long, we've not granted women the uninterrupted attention and space to be uniquely them. And I will say that sometimes, as our milestones get bigger and bigger, and for women, there's a lot of milestones. When you're having kids, when you're getting married, when you're having your second kid, when you're having your third kid, and then we'll discard you. Then we don't need to ask you any more questions. Then we'll ask you all the questions about your children. This cycle of milestones that society, even if you read Us Weekly, like it sort of makes me want to throw up that everything is about, women's milestones, whether it's another fucking page of bridal showers or another page of weddings, or who are you dating? What does your weight look like? Right. It's just these milestones and milestones. And the bigger our milestones get, the smaller we have to fit into them. And so the breaking free of the roles of being a parent and or partner and or professional, by professional, like I say, I define that as anybody working for any reason, breaking free of those roles to believe that we have a permission to be unavailable for the sustained attention for things that we love is highly subversive. And I'll just say that even in my own life, starting to write Fair Play, Jess, there was no book deal. There was nobody interested. And again, like I told you, when I started, you asked me that question. When I started, there was a ton of resistance. I still wanted to research. I was curious about why this was happening to me, how I became a statistic, 2/3 or more of what it takes to run a home and family falling on women. How would that happen to me? So I wanted Sundays off to explore, to be curious, to bring a laptop to a cafe, to start reading articles. Eventually I read almost probably every single article that's ever been written on the gender division of labor. Spoiler alert, they're dry as hell. So at least I try to bring some humor and cursing to this topic. But what I'll say in that pursuit was that I needed time, uninterrupted attention to think, to understand, to process what I was reading. I did it on Sundays. And I remember back then my entire community being like, well, you're working during the week. Like, don't you want to see your kids on the weekend? Seth's going to leave you because you're never around, like stupid shit like that over and over again. Who's babysitting your kids? And when I'm in the cafe, I'm like, just leave me the fuck alone.
Well, that's another one that drives me nuts when people say, oh, dad's babysitting. Dad's not babysitting. Dad's a parent. He's just being a parent. That's all.
And also how subversive it is that our society thinks it's amazing that men can take care of their kids alone. Like when did this happen to me that I felt like Seth couldn't take care of our kids alone, that I had to surround him with a million women if I wasn't there? What kind of bullshit is that? I will ask you that as, if you are in a hetero cisgender relationship, does your male partner take care of your kids alone? Or do you feel like you have to surround them with women when you go do anything that's for you? So these things became really important in the Fair Play journey, that not only do we make more time fairness, but that when we have it, we know what to do with it, that we don't fall into a passion gap by just being defined by our roles.
Well, and when you have that time, you're not like confused with what to do with it either.
Correct.
Like you're keeping your loves, your interests, your hobbies, whatever it may be, and you're devoting the time to do it.
Absolutely. You can't, it's a not forgetting. It's a never forget moment in terms of, again, why I wear my initial now. So that I don't forget that, there's power in being loud and wrong. There's power in being big, right? There's taking up
power.
Space.
I was going to say power in taking up fucking space. Absolutely. The more,
and that's also why naming matters. I think the problem was the names we had for these things are so belittling to the importance that I saw in the science to our mental health and our longevity. When you hear the word passion project or hobby or vanity project, or even Forbes called it a distraction. I'm like, a distraction from what? These words are so disempowering. So I really wanted to rename it something where there was space in it. A lot of people may use, the term, well, I need white space to think. A lot of my Black friends didn't like the word white space because they felt like white space for them was a place they couldn't be in. As a Jew, I'm pretty sensitive to that as well. So I was like, white space is not a good word either. And so unicorn space became this idea that it is not optional. It is magic. It is the antidote to your burnout. It is that important. It's the big rocks. The sand can come later. The big rocks are the investment in your being uniquely you and sharing it with the world. And so that's why the idea of a unicorn, which is mythical and magical, but doesn't fucking exist, felt like the right word, because we can claim it, but it doesn't exist until we, as we said earlier, take that boundary back, to believe we have permission to be interested in our own lives.
I love it. And when does it come out? When can people read it?
Yes, December 28th. It's the New Year, New You books. But again, I'm not a big New Year, Okay, let's say that again. I'm not a big New Year, New You person. I don't think anybody has to be reinvented ever. I think we just have to be reinvested in. And that's the distinction.
Also, January 1st doesn't make or break who you are as a human.
Correct.
You can fix some things throughout the year. You don't have to wait until the new year to do that. You can start, believe it or not, anytime.
And that's why December 28th actually felt like a really apropos date, because the idea was exactly, are you going to wait arbitrarily for 3 more days to feel like you have to reset? And we never have to do that. We should always be reinvesting in ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. So let's start to wrap it up. Thank you so much for being here. I have 2 more questions. First one, so your kids they're sort of like varying ages, right? So it's 5. What are 5?
10, 5, 10.
And then I have a teenager.
Yes. So then 13 is Zach. He's
13,
the oldest.
Zach, your oldest. Yes.
My oldest. He is the one who was handed to me when I was told, "Hi, Mom."
Hi, Mom. So Zach's hi, Mom. So between 13 and 5, there's a gap. What is something, and your answer to this is probably going to be interesting. What is something that you cannot live without with your kids at their current ages?
That's such a great question. I love that question. Every single one of my kids is what I can't live without, in terms of what they are teaching me, Jess, or something that I need to get through those different ages.
However you interpret it.
Okay, I like that. I will say that I can obviously live out without a village. So that's what I needed. That's the baseline. And I like math. So I've realized it takes about 5 humans per child. So we have 15 humans, neighbors, friends, a cadre of babysitters, Cecilia, who I love. She's our nanny and part of our family, Seth's parents, my mother. I mean, it takes a fucking village. But in terms of what I'm seeing in them is watching them understand unicorn space has been so beautiful, Jess. They have their own interpretations of it. And I will say that understanding that my gift for them is not that they're always happy, but that they always have experiences that can't be taken away from them that they did, is a very different way to parent. And that's what we do with our kids. They say they can't take that away from me. I performed on that stage. I got my black belt. No matter what happens in my life now, no one can take that away from me. I did that. So that's our framing. And it came a lot out of understanding the science around happiness, which is that it should be a clue, not the end all. And so I will leave us with that wish that as mothers, we don't have to have the pressure to say we need our kids to be happy. We just need to direct them to say, we want you to follow your clues, tap into those feelings of rage, jealousy, resentment, happiness. When you feel them, why are you feeling them? And follow those happiness clues. That's where happiness should live, as a clue, not the be all end all.
I love it. And I got to tell you, I think you actually just answered the final question with that. I'll give you an opportunity if you want to change it. I cannot imagine there being a better answer for it, though. And that question is, what is something you know now that you wish you knew before becoming a mom? And you literally just said, follow those happiness clues. Mm-hmm. I will answer it on your own, but that is that's a really good one.
Yes, follow your happiness clues. And more than that, to get there, we need quiet, we need space, we need awareness to understand and to be able to listen. Oprah says, right, listen to those whispers. How can you listen to those whispers if you have people screaming in your ears all the time? So recognize that that's the space we're talking about here, the return to your values, to who you are. That's my wish for everybody in 2022.
Perfect. And if Oprah says it, it's true. So
Yes,
that's like,
exactly.
that's the only thing I know in life to be true, is that if it came out of Oprah's mouth, it's true.
It's true. It
It's
is
true.
freaking true.
Well, listen, it is so nice to meet you. It was so nice to have you here. Where can people find you? Where can they follow you? And buy her books? Do it. Buy her books, please.
Thank you. I would say it depends on what you want. If you want more of this tone, Eve Rodsky is a great place to follow. It's the darker, angrier version of me, but there's a lot of fun solutions based stuff happening at Fair Play Life. That's two different Instagrams. I'd say that's the best place because we answer DMs, any different type of family structure questions, how fair play can apply to that. We answer those questions as well. We do a lot of fun giveaways on that channel. So I would say Fair Play Life for the fun, and then Eve Rodsky for the information.
Yeah, it's like grunge Eve and light Eve. I love it.
Totally,
Perfect.
exactly.
Well, thank you so much again. And thank you for watching Shit Moms Won't Say. We'll see you next week.